In this example, we'll look at a more advanced type of widget. So the previous video that we did, we just did an introduction to a widget, which was a very, very easy, simple widget. So this widget will do a bit more. So what we want to do in this widget is basically read from an RSS feed and show some news stories on the widget. So what we'll do is to create a new widget. You're just going to go into your Java folder, into your package folder there, and going to say new widget, and you're going to call it or click on App Widget. So then you get to this new Android component. We're going to leave it basically anything you can type there. For the name of your widget, I'm just going to leave it as new app widget. So the placement will be home screen only there. I'm going to have it resized horizontally and vertically. Let's say the minimum width should be 3 and the height should be 2. I'm not going to use a configuration screen, so I'm just going to say finish now, and this now creates my widget for me. Okay, so now after the widget has been created, let's just quickly run through it on what gets created again. So in the Android manifest, you'll see there's a new receiver tag that gives you the name of your widget. This is the app widget. There's some metadata with it. It listens for an update, then it's going to call new app widget. So this is created for you automatically. Okay, so that's the Android manifest file. Then inside of your package folder, you'll see there's a new app widget that was created for you, and this is the one that will run whenever your widget needs to update. Then in your resources folder under drawable, you'll get that picture of how your widget looks when the user selects it, and then under layout you'll get the layout for your widget, and under XML you'll get the app widget info. Okay, so now the first thing I want to do for this widget is to quickly go and create the layout for the widget. So I'm going to go into this layout folder of mine and go into new app widget. So this is the new app widget. It's the basic one that we did on the previous video, and we're going to change this one now. So I'm going to go into the text. I'm going to change the relative layout there, and I'm going to change it to a linear layout, and I'm going to make sure that the orientation is set to vertical. The background color I'm going to use as white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Fs there. And then the padding there, you'll see it is under dimension or basically under the dimensions XML file under widget margin. So if you go to the dimensions XML file, it's under values, you'll see the margin is set to 8 dp there. So I'm going to leave it like that. That's 100% fine. I don't need to have it anywhere else. So this is 100% the 8 dp margin. Remember that they recommend that you have a margin around your widget. So this is the default one, and this one will do more than fine. I'm just going to close down some of these. Okay, the main activity not going to use. Okay, so let's just go back to the new app widget XML file. So this is the layout file for my widget, and what we've set so far is the linear layout, the orientation vertical, and we set the background color. I'm going to remove the text view now because we're going to do our own thing now. So if we go to the design, this is now designing how your widget should look like. So if I just close down all of these, how do you get to it? You're going to go to resources, layout, new app widget, and that's how your widget will look like. It's that file. Okay, so if I go to this file, this is basically then just a blank screen, and what I want to do now is to add some data to the screen. So we're going to read from an RSS feed, and we're going to show the title of the new news story. We're going to show let's say a description of the news story, and when we click on the description it will take us to a link. So we also need to retrieve the link. But for what we're going to display there, we're only going to display the title and then the description and maybe a refresh button as well. So let's just quickly create some pictures there. So I'm going to right click on the resources folder, and you're going to say new vector asset, and going to click on icon, and let's go to communication first. I want this book picture there, so it's actually saying import contacts, but I'm going to use that book picture just to show that we're reading from an RSS feed. And I'm going to call this one, let's call it book, and then just say next and say finish, and you'll see under the drawable folder you've got that book XML now. Then let's do that again. So we're going to go to new vector asset, go to icon again, and let me just see. Under action, I want to have this refresh type of button. which says auto renew there, or cached, or whatever type of refresh button you want there. And I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to call this one a refresh as well. And then just say next there and finish, and you can see that we've got both pictures there. We've got a book and we've got refresh. Okay, so now in my layout, what I want to do is to quickly show the picture there, but I'm going to do that in a linear layout that is horizontal. So you'll see that we've got a base layout that is vertical, and inside of that base layout I'm going to place a linear layout that is horizontal. I don't want to have it span the whole height there, so I'm going to set the height to wrap the content. Okay, so what I want to add to this one now is that book picture. So I'm going to go to the palette there and going to go down to image view, and I'm going to drag in the image view into this horizontal layout. And now it's going to ask me for the picture I want to use. I want to use the book there, and I'm going to say OK. So for the book itself, let's click on the image view. Let's set the width to 120, and let's make that one 60. Let's just see how that one looks. Okay, that would be fine. So 120 by 60 would be fine for the book. And then next to that book, remember it's horizontal layout, so it's horizontally over the screen from left to right. So just after the book I want to show another linear layout. So let's go to the palette again. I'm going to show a linear layout now that is vertical just after that image view. So I'm going to add it to the linear layout. I'm just going to move that image view again to the top, so I make sure that the image view is first and then the linear layout. So you can see we're going to display the image view, and then right next to it there will be a linear layout again. And in that linear layout I'm going to add 2 text views. So let's just scroll up. I'm going to have one text view in that linear layout and another one in that linear layout. So if you look at the screen now, you can see that we've got the book and 2 linear layouts. So don't worry too much about that now. We're going to fix that now on how it looks. For now, make sure that your componentry looks something like this if you want to follow this video. So we added the picture there. It's a horizontal linear layout, but in the horizontal linear layout we've placed an image view and another linear layout. Now after this linear layout that's horizontal, this big one there that you can see, I want to add another text view. So let's just go to the palette again. I'm going to add another text view there. You can see it's at the same level as the linear layout. And then after that text view, I'm going to add another picture. So I think for that one, let's just add another horizontal linear layout. Let's go to layouts there, horizontal linear layout. So it's going to be inside the big one, but at the bottom. Let me just see which one is first now. So this horizontal linear layout, I'm going to also say wrap the content, and I don't want that one at the beginning, I want him at the end. So it's first this linear layout, then the text view, and then another linear layout that's got nothing in it. So what I want to put into that one is an image view again. So let's place that image view into this horizontal linear layout, and this time it's going to be the refresh button, or the picture there, which will become a button then. And let's make that one, let's just see, 60 by 60. It's too big. Let's make it 20 by 20. Too small. 40 by 40. 30 by 30. Let's see. Yeah, I think that one will be fine. So let's make it 30 by 30, or even a bit smaller, 25 by 25. Okay, so that's the picture. And then on this linear layout, I'm going to say on the width also wrap the content. And then I'm going to go to all properties there, and I'm going to set the gravity, which is the layout gravity, to be on the right hand side. So the refresh button will be there right at the side of it. Okay, and then let's add some margins now. So on this linear layout that's horizontal, that's containing all of those, let's add a margin on the left of 5 dp, on the right of 5, and the top 5. And then on this text view there, I'm also going to add a left margin of 5, right margin of 5, and a top margin of 5. Okay, and then on this linear layout, let's also add a left margin of 5, right of 5, well, right's not really necessary, and then top also 5. Okay, so maybe let's make this one a bit more on the linear layout. Let's say on the right hand side, sorry, I've got a margin on the left. On the right hand side, let's put a 10 margin there. Okay, so that's basically how it looks now. And then on this linear layout, let's just go into the linear layout that's horizontal. Inside of that one, we've got 2 text views. So on this linear layout that's vertical, I'm going to set the padding or the margin on the left. Let's set that one to 10 as well, to just move it away a bit. So at this stage, we've got it looking like that. And now let's move that text view from the top a bit. So let's go to the first text view there, and on the top, let's move it 10. Just see how that one looks, maybe a bit more. So I'm going to set that margin to 12. Let's see, yeah, that could work. So let's set that margin to 12, and then for this one, we'll just add a margin at the top of, let's say 3 or something, just to move it down a bit. And that's basically the layout for the widget now. So let's set the title there. That one will be the title. Let's set that one to bold. So we're going to go down and set the text style to bold. And maybe the text size could be a bit bigger. So it's currently 14. Let's make it 16. Just to have it a bit bigger than the rest. So that will be the title then. That will be the description, and these will be the buttons. So very important, if you want to have your buttons clickable or your text views clickable, then you need to go to the clickable property. So I'm going to click on the description there. That will be this text view, and I'm going to go down and search for the clickable property, and I'm going to make it clickable so that when the user clicks on the description, it will take him to that specific web page online. Okay, and then on this picture as well, on the image view, let's go and set the clickable property there as well, so that we can click both of those too. Right, so let's start setting some text. So I'm going to go down to the values strings XML file, and the first text that I want to set there is for the text that we want to have as the title there. So I'm going to say title, sorry, first string. Let's say title. And which we'll basically just saying random news there. So let's go back to the layout now, and I'm going to change. Oh, man, come on. So I'm going to change this text view there. The text should be what I have as the title there. It should basically show random news there. So I'm going to change the text programmatically on this text view and this one. So I'm just going to give them IDs so that I can change the text there. So I'm going to call this one TV title. That will be the title of the news story. And this one will be TV description, to have the description of the random news. So when we drag the widget to the screen, we will basically get the news from the RSS feed, show the title there, show the description there. When you click on the description, it will take you to the link, and then refresh will just get a new random story for you. Now another thing that we also need to do is on the image view, we need to give this image view also a name. So I'm going to say this one should be IV sync, to sync a new story, and then I think we've got everything we need. We've got the text view, we're going to set the text, we've got the text view, we're going to set the title, set the description, and then if the user clicks on this one, we can also do something with it. Now, a lot of people like to have their widgets a bit see-through or transparent. So if you want to do something like that, you can go into the text there, and in your linear layout, your main linear layout, you can see there's a background color. So what you can do is then change some values there, and we won't see it on the white. So let's take this book one. So you'll see at the book picture there, it's black. It's basically just a normal black there. So if I'm going to add a 50 in front of the color, although this one is not working, let me just use 0. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, which is a normal black. And if I add a 50 there, you can see that I'm changing the transparency of that color now. It seems as if it's gray now, but I'm actually changing the transparency of it. So you can go and play around with this value that you add at the top or at the front of it. The higher the value, the less see-through it is, the less transparent it is. So I'm going to use -90 there on the book, and let's say on refresh also, let's make it black, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, but a 90 at the front will make it a bit see-through, so it will appear actually in my widget, it will appear as a type of a gray picture, although it's not synced now, and I'm not sure why it takes so long to sync the colors, but in any case, it will basically display now as a type of gray. So you can do the same thing for your linear layout. The background color there, instead of showing white, we can show a 90% white there, which means 10% you can see through. Okay, so you're changing the transparency by adding a number, a percentage value at the beginning of your color. So that's just for information if you want to use something like that. So ours will be a bit see-through. When we run it, I'll show you that you can actually see it's see-through there. Okay, so this is the design then of the widget. So we've got our design done. You can see now it seems gray there. It's actually see-through now, but the black then became a type of gray there. So we are done with the layout of the widget. So we can now continue to see how we can get data from the RSS feed. Right, for the next part of this video, I want to have a look at how can we retrieve data from an RSS feed now into the widget. So we've done the video on retrieving an RSS feed. So what I want you to do is to go to this link, https://goo.gl and then a va16fz. So go to that website, which will give you this example coding.java. I'm not going to do everything of the coding again to show you how do we retrieve data from an RSS feed, because I've explained that in detail in that application or in that video. So please run through that video again on the parts on how do we extract data from an RSS feed. Okay, so I want you to open up that link there, which gives you this example coding.java, and you're going to download that link. After downloading the link, you can go to your downloads folder, and I'm going to just copy this one now. I'm going to copy there. Let's just copy, and I'm going to paste this into my project folder there. So I'm going to paste there and say OK. Now this is just so that we can copy and paste into the service that we're going to use next. So in the example coding, I'm just going to quickly run through it. You'll remember this from the RSS feed video. This method basically just gets us an input stream so that we can start reading from the RSS feed. And then you remember that we had an async task there running the do in background. There's the URL that we retrieved the data from. We used the XML pool parser factory to help us to open up the stream for UTF-8 reading. And then if we go into the document, we're testing, we're going to keep on extracting while the event type is not at the end of the document. And if it's a star tag and it's an item tag, we set the inside item to true. If it's a star tag and it's called title and we are inside the item, then we extract the title from the RSS feed. So I'm not sure if you went through that video. So if you haven't yet, go through that video again so that you understand how to read from an RSS feed. So the only change I made here was to add this extra else if there. So you'll see that I've got three array lists there: descriptions, links, and titles. And to those array lists, which in any case in this specific file is not initialized yet. So we'll copy and paste the coding from here to the service that we're going to use now. But basically I'm extracting the title, adding it to the titles array list, extracting the links to the links array list, extracting the descriptions to the descriptions array list. So we're going to use this coding now and copy and paste it where we basically want to use that coding. So let's first create a new service now. So I'm going to right click there and say new. You're going to go to service and it will be a normal service. It must be enabled. I'm not going to use it as exported there, and maybe we can call this service the news service. This one will help us to extract the data from the array, or sorry, from the RSS feed, which is a news service. So I'm going to say finish there, and it creates the service for us. Remember, in the manifest file, it will also add that service for you there. Now, because we're going to read data from the internet, you need to have the user's permission there, and we want the permission to use the internet. And also, I'm going to show you how to quickly connect. I've got a method there, example coding, which is, I call the method connection available, which basically checks if a connection is available for you. So in order to do that, we also need some other permissions. So we're going to say access. You'll see there's a network state. So we want to access the network state. There's also a permission to access the Wi-Fi state. Okay, so we want to have those two permissions as well if we're testing for an internet connection. So before we retrieve the data then, using the internet, we're first going to check if there's an internet connection using this sample method that I gave you there. Okay, so in the news service then, let's just go into that service. You'll remember that a service basically needs a few methods there. So I'm going to override methods, and what we want is the onStart command method there. And for some reason they include this value that is just giving errors. So that's fine. The onStart command should look like this. So there's your service class, and we're first going to set up the service class before going back to the widget and updating the widget. So in the service class now, we want to read data from the RSS feed. So there's a few things that I'm going to copy from this example coding, and the first things is these array lists. So I want to have those array lists declared at the top. So you can just type them or copy and paste them. So we're going to have the description, the links, and the titles declared in the news service. And then I want to have this method, very important, as well as that method, very important. And also this whole async task. So the rest you can also copy. So it's basically from the input stream method right down to the bottom, we're going to need all of those. So I'm just going to add them at the bottom there and paste. And that's all the methods that we'll need. And you should not have any errors right now because we declared those three. Now in the onStart command, or if you want to in your onCreate, you can set up those three, but we're going to do that now. Okay, so you'll see that we've got then the connection available method. Now this connection available method basically checks for two network types, type mobile and type Wi-Fi. Then we go to the connectivity manager and connect to the connectivity service, and we check what or if there is an active network, if there's active network info. So if it's not null, it means that we've got an internet connection. But what is the type of internet connection? It could be mobile or it could be Wi-Fi. So in this method, it will basically return true if we've got either a Wi-Fi or a mobile connection, and it will return false if there's an exception or if there's absolutely no connection available. So we're going to use this method, and a nice way of using this method could be in your application class where you call this method connection available. Because then this connection available method will be available in any class that you're using, and you only need to pass the context and it will check the connection for you. So I think let us quickly do that. I'm going to create a new Java class then, and I'm going to call this the application class. I'm going to say OK. And for it to be the application class, I'm going to say extends application. And if you remember correctly now, the application class is the class that runs right before anything else in your application runs, even before your main activity. So this is a very nice place to set up some variables or whatever you want to do. But in order to make it the application class, you need to say extends application and then go into your manifest, and you're going to add the name attribute there, and you can see their application class just pops up for me. So I'm going to use that application class. So make sure that it's in the Android manifest, and in the name tag you're referring to that specific class. And now you can see it's not grayed out anymore. Now for your application class to actually do something, we can use the onCreate method there. to do some code if you want to initialize some variables or whatever you want to do. So remember, your application class will now, if you set it up like this by saying extends application and going into the manifest, setting up the name attribute, then your application class will be the very first thing that runs in your application. So if we quickly, let me just close down some of these now. Close down that one, we're going to use that one, we're going to use that one, let's close this one also. Okay, so now in the application class, let's go to this connection available method. So let's take it away from the new service now. So I'm going to cut it from there and we're going to use it in the application class. So now this application class will become available for me as soon as the application starts, and I can use this connection available method. Okay, so now in the new service, we'll test that later on whether there's a connection or not. Okay, so now in the onStart command, and remember the onStart command is after the onCreate, the first method that runs inside of your service. And there's an intent, and this intent is the intent that activated the service. So basically what we're going to do in our new app widget is we're going to start this service. And then when the service gets started, we're going to send through also the ID for the widget that we want to update. So with this intent, you'll see now that we're going to pass in some data, which will be the widget's ID that we want to change. So now in the onStart command, I'm going to set up these three now, the description, the links, and the titles. So I'm going to say description or descriptions equals new array list. And the type of the array list will just be a normal string. And then we're going to do the same for the links, equals new array list. And the type will again just be a normal string. And then the last one will be the titles. So it's going to be titles equals new array list of type string. And then those three are then set up. So now we can start using those three, the description, the links, and the titles as array lists. Now another thing that I want to have there at the top is an intent object, and we're going to use this intent to basically get a connection to this intent that was passed through. So let's just do that quickly. So we're going to say, and you're going to see where we're going to use that now. So we're going to say this.intent, which is the intent there at the top. We're going to set that to this intent that was passed through, which is just called intent. And the reason for this is so that we can get hold of this intent that was passed through inside of the get or the doing background method. And you'll see where we're going to use that now. Okay, so we've got the intent that started this specific service, and we've got it globally in this class so that we can access it anywhere. Now what we want to do is to check if the connection is available. So I'm going to use the application class for this. So in the application class, there's a static method called connection available. So I'm going to say application.connection available, and then we need to pass in the context. And we can just pass in this there, which will basically just be the context of the service, or actually the safest way there is to say get application context there. Okay, so we get the application context and we pass in the application context. And now we're checking if the connection is available. If the connection is not available, it will go into the else part. So the else part, we can actually just show a toast there and maybe say, please, and I'm going to use this again as the get application context instead of this. Then we're going to say, please make sure your phone has an internet, or maybe an active internet connection. Okay, so that's when something went wrong. Now we can't get a connection there. We will go to this one, and then I'm going to call stop self, and stop self will stop this service from running, because if we don't have an internet connection, it doesn't make sense for this service to run at all. So we'll show a message to the user, please make sure that your phone has an active internet connection, and then we stop the service from running. Now if the user clicks on the refresh button, then again, after he's got a new connection, then we can start the service again for him. Okay, so now if we've got a connection available, we want to now make a connection to the app widget. So if you go to the left hand side, you can see there's the new app widget. So that's the layout file, and we want to make a connection to that layout file and start doing something to it and start showing basically data on that widget. So in order to do that, we need to use a remote views class. So the remote views class should be from android.widget, and that one we're going to call views, or whatever you want to call it, equals new remote views android.widget. And then you'll see that we need to have a package name there. So the package name you'll find right at the top there. So there's my package name. I'm going to copy it. And let's go there. And in double quotation marks, because it wants it as a string, that's my package name. And then the second argument will be the layout file. So this layout file for the widget is in r.layout. And we called it new app widget. That is the layout file that we want to connect to, this new app widget.xml file. So this remote views class, you can see it's a class that describes a view hierarchy that can be displayed in other process. The hierarchy is inflated from a layout resource file, and this class provides some basic operations for modifying the content of the inflated layout basically. So in this case, our layout is new app widget, and this remote views class will help us to basically update data on that specific layout. So on that layout, I'm going to say views now dot. Now there's a special method called set text view text, and you can see there this one accepts a view ID. What is the ID of the text view that you want to set the text to? And then the second argument is basically the text. So what we want to do now is to set the text on let me just go to this XML file. We want to set the text on two text views. Just open up this one a bit bigger. So we want to set the text on the title as well as on the description. So you can see that the ID there is TV title, and this ID was TV description. So those are the two that we want to set the text to. So I'm going to go to views.setTextViewText, and the first argument now is the ID. So I'm going to go with r.id dot, and I've called it TV title, the first one. And then the second argument was the text. So what do we want to set the text as? Right at the start, we're going to say busy retrieving data, and then maybe just say 3 dots there, busy retrieving data. And the same thing we're going to do with set text view text for the r.id.tv description. We're also going to say busy retrieving data, or whatever you want to do. Maybe you just want to set it on one of the two or whatever. So basically, as soon as the guy clicks on the refresh button, the title and the description will go to busy retrieving data. Or also in the very first part, if you add the widget to the screen for the first time also, it's going to show busy retrieving data and busy retrieving data. So now we've updated, or we set on this remote views new app widget, go and set the text on TV title and TV description. And now we need to notify the app widget manager that there's been changes to the widget and he should update that widget. So I'm going to use app widget manager from Android app widget, and we're going to call getInstance.getInstance, and then the instance there will be getApplicationContext, and that's the application context to get an instance of the app widget manager. On that app widget manager, we're going to call update the app widget for me. So now it's going to update the app widget, and we need to send in the app widget ID or the IDs that we want to update. But in this case, let's just go with this one app widget that clicked on the refresh button. So it's going to be one app widget ID and then the remote views object. So what is the object ID or the widget's ID there? It will be coming from this intent that activated the service, because in this intent, we'll see when we get to the other class now, as part of this intent, when we start the service, we'll pass in the ID for the widget. So how do we get that? By calling intent.get, and I think we're going to use an integer there. So let's say get int extra, and then the value for that what we're going to call the data on the other side will be App Widget ID, or whatever you want to call it, and then it needs a default value. So if we cannot get that value, we'll use the default value as a normal 0. And then the last argument there will just be this remote views object. So basically we'll say, go to the App Widget Manager, update the widget with this widget ID that we're going to get from the intent, and what should you update? The widget's view, which is the one that's connected to new app widget. So this will then update the widget for you, and it will say busy retrieving data and busy retrieving data. And now we need to start, after doing that, that's basically like showing a progress bar for the user, but we're showing it on this specific widget. Then we want to start then the get stories in background. So how do you start that async task class? We're going to say new get stories in background, and we're going to call execute. And that is how you start a new async task class. So now we go to the async task. So we show to the user on the widget, busy retrieving data, update the widget, now it's showing. Then we go into the background. So remember, your async task basically has 3 very important methods. The on pre-execute, which I'm not going to use in this instance because I'm not going to show a progress bar. We're showing it there on the widget. And then after the on pre-execute, it goes into do in background. And after do in background, it goes to the on post execute method. So inside of my do in background method, we make a connection to the RSS feed, and here we start reading from it. We read the title, we save the title into titles. We read a link, we save it into the links. We read the description, we save it into the descriptions. So the whole do in background method is done completely. Okay, so now after this do in background method that retrieves the titles, the links, and the descriptions for us from the RSS feed, it will then go into on post execute. And you can see we return null there, so we don't really do anything with that result because our results is in titles, links, and descriptions, which is declared globally in this class, so we have got access to them anyway, also in the on post execute. So this is where I want to start now, changing the content of the widget is in the on post execute. When we are done in the background and we go into on post execute, this is now what we want to do on the widget. So because our widget is basically, or I want to design this widget so it shows random news stories, it's up to you how you want to do this. So this example will just be random news stories. So I'm going to use the random class to do this, java.util.random. And I'm going to call it random. And we're going to say new random there, just to get a new random object. And then on that random, I'm going to get a new random number there. So I'm going to say, let's call it random value equals random.nextInt. And the nextInt method, let's use one of the array lists, could be any one of them, and say size, because that's the number of elements inside of an array list. And the nextInt method, if I pass in, for example, there, I don't know if you know the nextInt method, but if I pass in a 6 there, it will give me random integers from 0 to 5. So that's why, for example, if you're using a dice, I could say +1 there because it's going to give me values from 0 to 5, but if I +1, it's going to give me values from 6 or 1 to 6 basically. So it depends on what you want to do here. So I'm going to pass in the titles, or one of the other array lists also, .size, which gives me the number of elements inside of the array. So let's say the array list has got 5 values or whatever. If there's 5 values inside of it, it will basically return me a random value that's going to be from 0 to 4, and that's basically the index values of the titles array list. So this will work perfectly to give me a random value outside or inside of those titles, descriptions, and links, because they will have the exact same amount of items inside of them. So that's a random value. So now we can go to that remote views again. So we're going to go to remote views again, just like we did there, to make a connection to it. So I think I'm just going to copy this part there, that whole part that we just did there at the top. So we're going to have remote views there. Again, we're going to link to the new app widget, the layout file. again, we need to set the title, but now we can set the title from that array list now. So we can go and say, go to the titles array list and get me the object at the random value position, and that gets me the new string value, and that's the value I want to place as the TV title. And we can do the same thing for the description now. We can say, go to the descriptions array list and get me the index value at that random value that was returned. So obviously that random value will stay the same then for both of those, so you'll get the title and the description that goes with it. Now the next part that we also retrieved there was the links. So you'll also remember that we said on the layout, when we click on the description, it should take me to the link. So how do you do that? That's the next part we're going to do quickly. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a URI there. So I'm going to say URI equals URI.parse, and then the string that you want to parse there will basically be your link. And that we'll get from the links array list. Get that same random index value, and then on that one will then be the link or the website's link to where we want to go when we click on it. So we're going to create a new intent to do this. So we're going to say intent, let's call it link intent, equals new intent. And then for this intent to actually open up a web page, we're going to say intent, the intent class, dot action, and there's an action view. Let me just type it out. Action underscore view. That's the one we need. So you view a web page. So this is the implicit intent that you're going to use. Action view, and then the second argument is just passing in the website that you want to open up with this intent. So you're going to view which website, this one described by URI, which is the link that we got from the RSS feed. Now for this to actually work, we need to have a pending intent, and the pending intent will basically just hang in the air somewhere and wait for the user to do something to activate that pending intent. And what we want to do to activate the pending intent, the user needs to click on the description, then it activates the pending intent. So let's just set up the pending intent quickly. So I'm going to say pending intent, let's just call it pending intent, equals pending intent dot get activity. And now in the get activity, we're going to have to get the application context there, so the context first. Then the second argument, a unique ID there for this pending intent. And then we're going to pass in the link intent there. So we're going to pass in link intent. So this is what the pending intent should do when it gets activated. It should activate the link intent there. Okay, and then the second or the last argument there will then just be a flag value that we're going to update. So that one will be pending intent dot flag, and you're going to say update current there. So this flag update current, if we can just move up a bit there, is basically updating the flag, or basically it says that if this pending intent already exists, keep it, but replace the extra data with what is in the new intent. So every time we're using or creating this one again, it will update that flag, or this flag will tell us that we should just update the data for this intent. Okay, so the pending intent will basically just be something that's waiting in the background somewhere, waiting for it to be activated. And we're going to set it up now. How do we activate it? How do we activate this now? So we're going to go to the views there that we created. That's a link to my widget. And on that views, I'm going to set an on-click pending intent. And the on-click pending intent will be set to a specific component. So I'm going to say it's r.id.tv description. I want to set the on-click pending intent to TV description, so that when the user clicks on TV description, which is this text view there, when he clicks on it, this pending intent should fire. That's waiting in the background for something to happen, and it will basically run link intent, which will start showing the website. So it's going to be r.id.tv description, and then the next one is the pending intent that you're going to use or to basically activate. So as soon as on this view, which is the app layout or the widgets layout, on the TV description, we set the on-click pending intent. So this pending intent will wait for somebody to basically click on TV description. It activates the pending intent. Pending intent activates link intent, which will start showing the website that we got from the links. Okay, so that is how you set up a button basically on a widget. So now the next part I'm going to do as well is to quickly define what this button there should do, which is actually just a picture, but it's called IV Sync. If the user clicks on it, I want to start the service all over again. So let's just set up that one quickly. So we're also going to use a pending intent. Let's call it pending intent sync. And then we're going to say pending intent again dot get. Now that one was get activity because we're using it to actually view a web page. This one will be get service because we want to run a new service. So I'm going to first pass in the get application context again. I'm going to pass in 0 again, which is just the request code there. Then I'm going to pass in the intent to activate the service. And now this is why we use this intent that I declared right at the top. You'll see there's intent. And to that intent was the intent that initially started this service is this intent that's connected now. So basically by saying use that same intent to start the service again is starting the service the exact same way as it was started now. Okay, so that's the intent that we're going to use to start the service, the same one that actually started the service. And then we're also going to use that pending intent dot flag update current. Okay, so that's the next pending intent, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say views dot set on click pending intent. This time it will be on the IV Sync button. So if you go there, you'll remember that that is called IV Sync. This picture is called IV Sync. So I'm connecting to that one. So I'm going to set an on-click pending intent on IV Sync. And which pending intent should it activate? The second one that we created now, which is called pending intent sync. So when somebody clicks then on that sync button, it's going to run this pending intent, which will run the intent, which is the intent that actually started the service right at the beginning, this intent. Okay. So now after setting all of those on-click pending intents and setting the text views and so forth, we need to update the widget because now this is just setting it in coding. We haven't updated the widget yet. So then we go to the App Widget Manager again. We call get instance. The instance will be get application context. There's the argument. Then we get now we've got hold of the App Widget Manager, and then we're going to call update the widget. And now again, which widget should we update? It's part of that intent. We're going to call get int extra, get that same app widget ID again, app widget ID, and the default value will again be a 0 if we cannot retrieve it. And then the last argument there, let me just see, that should actually be there. And the last argument will be this views that we made a connection to, which is this one there. Okay, so it's the same as what we did here. If you remember, that's where we call also the exact same thing. It's updating the exact same app widget ID. Okay, so there we go. We've got the app widget ID and the views and so forth. So now the widget has been updated successfully. Okay, so now how does everything start actually? Because we said that this widget should not have a configuration activity, it means that in this new app widget of ours, we can actually just go and say we run the onUpdate method. We actually won't need the update app widget at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to delete this method totally, and then I'm only going to use the onUpdate method. So we'll obviously not call that method there. So we'll do this one from scratch now, and then we can see what happens when we drag the widget to the screen and also when we refresh that app widget. Okay, so now let's look at this new app widget, which is the App Widget Provider. So this specific class is the one that gets activated if you remember from the previous videos, or the video where we did the simple widget there, if you go to your app widget info, you are able to say here what is the update period in milliseconds. And this update period in milliseconds, every time that, let's say you make it every 24 hours. So after every 24 hours, it will activate this new app widget class, which will run on update. So when this runs, you can see that we've got the context, we've got the app widget manager, and we've got all the app widget IDs. So remember that for your specific widget, the user can choose to have as many app widgets as he like. So I'm going to remove all the coding here. We'll do our own coding now inside of this one. So in the on update, I first need to see how many app widget IDs there are in order to run a loop to update all of my widgets. So I'm going to say final int, and maybe just call it number of widgets equals, and we're going to go into this app widget IDs dot length, which will give me basically the number of widgets that we currently have on the screen. And I'm going to run a simple for loop there. So I'm going to start at integer I equals 0, I less than this number of widgets, and then we're going to increment I. You can also run the faster for loop as well. So now we've got a for loop that will run through every single one of our widgets that we got on the home screen and update every single one of those widgets. Okay, so in this example, for our widget, actually, we don't need more than one widget. But remember that if you have a configuration activity, you could ask the user, do you want news for financial news, or do you want sport news, or whatever you want, and you can have different widgets with different content on them. Okay, so this is then just updating every single one of them if the user has actually dragged in more than one widget. Okay, so the first thing I want to do there is to get the app widget ID that we're currently updating. So I'm going to say int app widget ID, and we're going to call, or we're going to say app widget IDs, which is the array that was passed in. And we're going to get the widget ID at position I, the one that we're currently working with. Then I need to make a connection to the remote views again. So I'm going to say remote views, let's call it views again, equals new remote views. And again, I want to go to, now the context was passed in here. So instead of getting my package name there, I can also just call context dot get package name, and that will also give me my package name. And then the second argument is then again, what is your layout file that you're going to connect to, and that's new app widget. So we're going to say there r.layout.new app widget. So now we've got a connection to our widget again that we want to update, and now we can create this intent to start the service. So I'm going to say intent Alt enter for your import if you missed it there, equals a new intent, passing as the first argument the context. So the context was passed in to the onUpdate method. There's the context. And then the second argument, the service that you want to start. And we called our service news service. So I'm going to say news service there, and you need to remember to add the .class there as well. So I'm going to use this intent to start the new service. So remember now, in our new service, we want to get from that intent this app widget ID. So that's what we did here in the service. We get the app widget ID from the intent that starts the service. So this is what I want to do here. I'm going to add that data quickly. So I'm going to say intent.putExtra. And the put extra that I want to add there is to have exactly this value that I have there. So I'm going to copy it. And let's just add the value there. So that's the name of the data I want to pass through. And the data itself will be the app widget ID that we just got from there. Okay, so that will be the app widget ID. So before we start the service, we add some extra data to this intent, which is called the app widget ID. And we send it through as an integer there. So on the other side, in the new service, we say intent.getIntExtra, because it's an integer that we're passing through. What is the name of the data I'm passing through? It's called app widget ID. So if it exists, it will return back then this value that we passed as the second argument. If it does not exist, it will pass through 0. Okay, so let's just go back there. So we've got the intent. To the intent, we added this data to the intent, and now we can just call context that was passed in dot start service. Start service, and we pass in this intent. And that's all we need to do now. So after this, the service starts running, and then it will update the widget for me automatically by getting data from the RSS feed and so forth. So now what I want to do here is just to make sure that I go to this App Widget Manager now, that one there, App Widget Manager dot, please update the widget, or the update app widget for me. Update the app widget for me on this specific app widget ID, passing in this views there. Okay, so that basically then will update the widget, start the service will do all the updates and so forth, and then my widget will be working. So it's actually very easy part. In this class, we did all the hard work inside of the service class. So this part there will run for every widget that we've got on the home screen. We'll get the widget ID, we'll make a connection there, we'll basically get the intent, start the service, and then when the service gets started, then in the new service, it will start with what? We'll start with the onStart command, setting up the array lists, setting up that intent, checking if the connection is available, setting the widget's data to busy retrieving data, updating the widget, going into the background. Going into the background will be this async task, connects to the RSS feed, it retrieves all the titles, the links, and the descriptions. It go to the onPost execute, we get a random value there, we make a connection to the widget again, set the title and the description, set the link so that it will open up in a web page, set up the pending intent so that when TV description gets clicked, we will run this pending intent, that will run link intent, that will show the website. The other pending intent is on the intent object that started this service, which will be this intent there. So we're going to set the pending intent that will activate that intent when Ivy Sync gets clicked, and then we update the widget again. If you go into your new app widget, you'll see some problems there. If you sync again, you'll see some problems on where you set the two pictures. So just change it to Android source src and have it drawable book, as well as go to your picture at the bottom and have it Android source drawable refresh, and then that error should then be gone and we can run the application. I've also just made a few changes here in the layout file. I removed from this text view, I removed the layout margin, so there's no layout margin there. And also the text size is 12. If I go down to, let me just see if I changed anything else there. If I go to layout gravity, in the layout gravity, I just set the full vertical. Okay, so make sure that you've got that one full vertical there, and then everything should be fine then with your layout. So if we run the layout or run this application now, I'm going to quickly run the application and then come back and show you how it runs. Okay, so there the application is actually running, but we haven't done anything in the main activity, obviously. So I'm going to hold down and get to the widgets quickly. So you'll see my advanced widget is right at the top. I'm going to drag in that widget. And if I leave the widget, you can see there's the widget. Okay, so now the user is able to resize this widget to make it a bit bigger, or whatever you want to do there. And if I refresh, I can also make it bigger vertically as well. So let's say that's the whole widget then. So you can see there's random news. It got the title from there. It's got the description. If I click on the sync button, it retrieves the data again from the RSS feed and gives me another random value there. You can also see that if you click on this text view there, which is basically the descriptions, it opens up the web page for that specific news story. So it opens up the web page nicely. I'm not going to go into the web page now, but the web page opens up for that specific story, and if you click refresh, everything runs. Let me just show you again if we remove it now, if we go back and we add this widget, you can see that on update method automatically runs. If I leave it, you can see, well, my connection is very fast now. So you can see that the connection made automatically. We didn't even see that part of busy creating or busy connecting or whatever. Let me just see if I can actually see it. But I'm sure if the connection is too fast. Yeah, there we just saw it very fast. You can see that it was connecting. Okay, so in this stage, every time I click there, the service runs and it gives me new data. So maybe something else also, the title there, this title, I changed the text to be a bit smaller, so the size should be 12 there. But you can play around. I'm not an expert in layout, so this is basically just a simple layout that you can go and design how you want your specific widget to look. You can also see through there. It's a 90% see-through. If I change those values, I will see through a bit more and so forth. You can even have some round edges there to make it look a bit better, but I'll leave that for you. So this is basically creating a widget that can read from an RSS feed. And this widget will also update every 24 hours, and it will run the service and give you a new random story.